welcome to this episode of It's All About Engagement. We're coming to you from Boston, Massachusetts this week, and we're joined by Kurt Hosna, a good friend of mine, and he's here in Boston at the IMA Summit. Kurt, how are you?
Great, thanks for having me.
Cool. So we're here at the IMA Summit, the Incentive Marketing Association Summit, which is really where all of the industry leaders get together across multiple strategic industry groups, whether that's rewards people, solution providers like ourselves who provide employee recognition, sales incentive, channel incentive type programs, and kind of all of the individual links in that value chain. So Kurt, if I'll come to you first. It's a very global event here at the moment. So I think we've got people from over 30 countries. Can you've been in global for a long time. Maybe give us a little bit of history on what you've been doing over the last 20 years in this
Sure.
game.
Yeah. I started in the industry back in 1994, so it's been quite a while. I got into the global aspect of the industry about 2004. So since then, I've been in global environments trying to take U.S.-based solutions abroad to different countries. Mainly started with rewards, of course, but also solutions, technology solutions, extending what we did in the U.S. outwards, and seen a lot of change in those last 24 years, I guess.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you and I worked together for WorkHuman for quite a few years, and they are truly a global company.
Yes.
You're with ITA Group now. I'm obviously with Motisha. Any changes you've seen in that specific period? Because I think the pace of change is probably getting faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest change probably when you look back to 2004, you had to prove you could do global. You had to prove that you can deliver rewards everywhere. You had to prove you had the expertise of the culture and such. Now companies expect that. And if you come to the table without that capability and the ability to show that you've run some programs, it's a much different situation. Everybody expects everybody to be able to do that now.
What have you seen as, let's say, key changes over, let's say, the last 5 years? So let's say just before COVID and where we are now. What's your insights there?
Yeah, I think there's two. I think the employee engagement solution set has really driven a lot of that change. Because when you have a situation where you're engaging your entire workforce, you can't have a US first strategy and then rest of the world, which is where a lot of companies started back in the day. Mm-hmm. You really have to have a global outlook for those solutions. Mm-hmm. And also the consumer industry and the ability to deliver solutions, even though those aren't quite as global, the need to have consumer programs at the local and regional level, plus the rewards to support that, those two drivers have really made that difference in the market.
And if you look at the fact that a vision for US companies to go global was, if they went into the direction of Europe, it was like, let's go to London and we'll run the program out of London. Is that still the view that's alive, or what's your insights there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because I've seen and been on a lot of client phone calls where they may have 10 people in Peru, and those 10 people in Peru are as important as the 10,000 people in the U.S. or the 5,000 people in London. So at one time, I think, let's have a headquarters or base, if you will, in the U.S., mm-hmm. somewhere in Europe, London, somewhere in Asia, maybe Singapore. Mm-hmm. But now it's really, let's drill down deeper and let's not leave those 50 people in that far-flung country, what we may call far-flung because it's a border country, like a emerging country like Vietnam. Right. Mm-hmm. Let's treat those 50 in Vietnam the same way you would treat the many in the U.S. and Canada and other countries in Europe.
Yeah, you got it, right? So if you're trying to develop culture and instill culture in an organization, you say, but only for the guys in the developed nations, of course. It's a different experience for someone new in a more challenging country or where there's just more difficulty from a revenue point of view. It probably costs to be there, but that's part of the game, right? That's what you got to deliver.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't leave a country behind. Now, we all know doing the reality of this business and doing business in these countries is very different. So you may have more rewards in the U.S., you may have different communications in the U.S., but you still want to have what would be expected in those local countries to be local, feel local, be relevant. because these participants will very easily feel that it's a US-based program pushed on them. So you really have to have that local flavor and make them feel part of the entire enterprise.
Right, no, that's a good point. And the other thing I was thinking the other day, I was having a conversation here at the summit with somebody. They were asking me the question, like, what's the key difference between Europe or rest of world, say, if we put that in one, or even if we just say Europe for the moment, and North America? And, you know, can you give me something tangible? You know, and for me, I think it's to do with the market. So whether it's employee recognition or sales incentive, it's really all employee at the end of the day. That side of it, you know, if you look at it, it's employee loyalty as opposed to customer loyalty. But you know, the US has has a long-standing, mature market, right? So you know, after World War II, you know, as things and prosperity began to come through in the 1950s, and you know, the New World, and then going into the 60s and all that kind of stuff. It was commonplace for, and possibly earlier, but certainly then, for people in the US to be recognized for presidents' clubs, or, you know, for years of service, or retirement, or you know, a gold watch, or a plinth for your desk, or a certificate in your cubicle or in your office. That wasn't in Europe, and that's only really come to Europe, I would say, in the last maybe 15 to 20 years, to any great degree. Maybe some of the US companies, but I guess we haven't seen this kind of massive influx of US companies until the tech revolution, really. So, and that's driven it. So we didn't have that in Europe, but I think we kind of jumped to the technology, if you know what I mean, because a lot of the infrastructure was there to send people plinths or trophies or rings or watches or carriage clocks or whatever it was, and it was about supply chain, if you know what I mean. In the States, can you get me, you know, I don't know, 500 of these items, or can you send this item, you know, to that particular organization? Like if you look at O.C. Tanner, you know, O.C. Tanner started out as a jewelers. They're still a jewelers.
Merits it as well.
Really?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit of what you think as you've been in it a long time. You're American, but you've worked in Europe a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're dead on. I think early on, in especially the employee engagement stage, you did have a lot, what's the ROI, what's this going to give me? But that quickly turned into, it feels right, we need to do things for our employees, we need to recognize them. We all know Americans like the competition and be recognized. That took a while to get to Europe. And part of that, I think, where it's being adopted now in Europe is just more awareness, of course, but also the younger generation overall. It's obviously very globalized generation. You're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, you're seeing what other people are doing. So that younger generation, that younger workforce is expected for that. They're expecting that to be part of the program.
And as you said, I just want to pick in on that it's becoming a global economy. And yesterday I was honored to be part of an international panel on trends and success factors in running global incentive programs. And the question I got, I thought was very interesting, is mostly US companies came to the rest of the world and Europe, but now it seems that a couple of companies like Motisha, but also others, and the presence of many European partners being here proves it, is that we are also moving into the US market. And the question I got was, what makes your value proposition in a way attractive for those US companies that you on their home market can add value? And I gave an answer, and it resonated, I think, with the audience, is that Europe is such a small country or region with multiple countries, multiple cultures. And for instance, Belgium, we're so small but do have 3 languages. International fast-moving consumer companies use our country as a test market because it's so small, but it gives such a good flavor on how culture responds. And by DNA, it's translated or has been translated in the technology, for which I think international US companies then also for their home market feel that you can really translate those values and the culture through the technology to inspire their people. So I thought it was a very interesting question. What's your view?
Technology is virtual, right? You can be anywhere in the world and have the same technology around the world. And that would be, you asked first question, what's different and what's new? That is a big difference. When back in the day, 25 years ago and even more, you look these smaller companies out of these different countries in Europe, Latin America, Asia were looking for that U.S. company to latch on to and be part of. But now I'm seeing these companies from these smaller countries, from our point of view, U.S., that really are leading the way. And it's like, how are they getting into this client? How are they selling this business in the U.S.? And that's a huge change. And I think it's that message is right. It's I think the perfect market for our type of businesses where we're not continually having to evangelize. When the market isn't saturated, but they know what they want. So you don't have to go in and convince them that you've got to do recognition. You got to do all these different solutions.
You don't have to sell the
engagement.
Bible anymore.
Exactly, exactly right. So, and that's been a huge change. So now anybody can come in, have a great message, have a great culture fit with that client, and be successful.
Right. And if you take that, if I just go back to the piece about O.C. Tanner, they started off as a jewelry company. I'm not entirely sure of the year in Salt Lake City. Presumably some large organizations, U.S. corporations, whether it be GE, I don't know, but those big powerhouses, maybe back in the 50s or something. Hey, can you give us an anniversary ring,
Right.
or a piece of
watch,
jewelry, or a
yeah.
clock, or a watch? So they were effectively a reward provider, if you know what I mean. And they're a jeweler, but they were able to get into that B2B market. To me, that's the
Right.
origin of the B2B market, right? And they've been organically pulled into, well, okay, we can give you the watch, but what are you trying to achieve here?
Right.
What is
Right.
it more than the gift? Well, it is, right? It's engagement. It's staff retention, it's whatever, motivation, whatever we want to call it. So then they presumably, and I don't know that much about the company, but I'm just thinking about that timeline, presumably then they begin to think about, well, how do we build a product that will create that environment? You'll still get the watch or whatever, but how do we build a product around that? Because the market's moving, right?
Right.
And that's taken a long time in the States. If you can imagine, even if you go back to the 50s now, so whatever that is, 70 odd years, that kind of process has been long. But in Europe, first of all, you were delighted if you had a job. Economically, we weren't in a good place, right? In the 40s and 50s, emigration was rife.
Yeah.
Migration over to the US, because this was where the economic, the Marshall Plan, but this is where the opportunity really was, and that to some degree still is, albeit the playing field is a bit more level. So the idea of rewarding somebody with a piece of jewelry or whatever the gift was, it was alien. You're lucky to have the job. Your salary is your
motivational
reward,
driver,
right? And that has gradually changed. I think in particular in Europe, and it is filtering into Asia Pacific or rest of the world. In Europe then we said, you get more holidays than your US counterpart, or you get healthcare, or you get whatever. So that's your benefits. So that it was a tougher sell to say, well, you need a recognition program or whatever it is, or a sales incentive program in Europe, whereas the States were systemizing that at that stage. They were ahead of us. To now, where the conversation has completely shifted, it's not compensation and benefits, which was what it was in Europe. You're saying, no, this is about engagement. This is about hardline business results. I'll reduce employee turnover or attrition, I'll drive costs down, I'll improve your bottom line. So it's nothing to do with a guy's compensation and benefits. There's a business case. And I think, so we kind of skipped those years that in the US, and we've kind of gone straight into the technology bit, albeit it's a much more recent market. And we're now providing kind of good quality, best-in-class stuff there.
Right.
So the markets are beginning to level, but obviously in the US you've got volume. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've been in the industry long enough to see a couple cycles, and what's nice about engagement is when business is great, you don't want to lose your best employees, right? When business cycles down and you have to have rifts and lay people off, you want to keep the good employees. So there's always need for engagement, and we tend to lag that up and down by enough timing that our business and engagement usually isn't too adversely affected by that, because you want to keep the best, and you want to, whether it's high, whether you're on a high, you don't want to go to a competitor, or you're on a low because you know they're working harder now because there's less people. You want to keep engaging them. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it's really key for any client or any enterprise to company to keep that.
And this is at company level, which makes perfectly sense to help achieve the company goals and the strategic objectives. If you look at it from, let's say, a regulatory perspective, what are you seeing as trends if you roll out a global program? So with what do you have to take extra into account besides your own company objectives that you need to do to run a successful global program?
Yeah, there's several now. And in the market, it's always changing, shifting a lot. You know, we used to be able to ship things in India or buy things that ship around India, for instance, and now you have to have a company registered there or an agent there. Then you have the challenges of the different taxes and such to do that. So there's a lot more complication there. We used to send a lot of gift cards down to Latin America, never had an issue. Then all of a sudden you start having issues where they're getting lost in the mail. Now you got to shift to electronic. So it's the real key is to stay ahead of that, or recognize it right away and pivot to that. But and then you have regulations around just the different finance regulations that you have, and especially the privacy regulations. You know, GDPR is kind of the cornerstone of that, and you see that in Europe, and that really seems to be something that's hard to abide by from the point of view, if you haven't done any of your technology, is not ready for it, it's not an easy task. And when you go to regions like Asia and such, where they don't have GDPR, but much of the privacy is modeled after GDPR, it'll help once you have it set. But that whole privacy piece is huge.
It's
as
key.
well.
Yeah? Sometimes they say, Europe is slow in getting something done, but I think in this instance the whole world is looking at Europe, and they're completely surprised how we were able to do this in a couple of years, and now everybody, as you said, is looking on how we've done it and how it's been translated into solutions.
Yeah, it's a model they can take off the shelf, right, and apply to their own country.
Yeah. And the conversation has been going on for quite a long time. You know, there's some progress made on it, but you know, the harmonization of taxation comes up in the European Union all the time. When are we gonna move to this model? You know, okay, we have done it now to some degree with corporation tax, right? So that's now a level playing field. But when are we going to do it with sales tax or VAT and you know, and all of those, that other layer of complexity, and it is quite complex, as you know. But I think we're moving in that direction. People see the value in it from a trading point of view. You know, that it just makes life so much easier.
But back to the point you made earlier about that's what we pay them for. You have these benefits. You know, that is changing quite a bit, but you still have the pockets, right? You still have countries in Europe and Asia, Latin America, that still have that thought process of we pay you a salary, we give you great benefits, so we don't need to go above and beyond. Now, when they see that their peers in other countries or their peers in other companies have those benefits, that helps change that. But it is still there in pockets, and but it's going away. It's interesting to see how quickly it's changed. Even in the last 5 years, we've seen a real difference in Europe now for acceptance of employee engagement and such.
And what's your vision there? Because they look at other countries, okay, then the other countries, will follow and what the program wants to achieve. But there are living indexes that are different. People earn less or more, or what's your view there, and how do you cope with such an ecosystem that you try to?
Yeah, so we build that right into our technology. So it's just a natural part of the technology. You give 100 points in the U.S. or $100. Let's say that's $100 in value, and then we're going to adjust it on the one it's paid out to India, China, UK. You're going to go up on some countries, down on others, and then when it comes the other way as well, if the award's coming from Switzerland to the U.S., it's probably going to be adjusted down. So we build that right in because that's core. You can't give somebody in another country too much or too little.
And have you ever had issues where people were, as a matter of speaking, looking across the border and then saw, okay, these guys are getting $100 more than I. Have you ever
No, we
had
never.
such a situation?
Yeah, it's interesting because normally you're isolating them by catalog, so they don't see each other's catalog. You don't have much expatriate movement that you see too much of that. And I've never had a situation where that somebody in one country complained about selection in another and a payout in another country. So,
And it's equitable, right? It's a standard of living index, which is a real thing. It's not something that you or I or any of us came up with. There is a standard of living index. And it's to level the purchasing power of whatever that award is. So, you know, $100 in, you know, the value, the purchasing power of $100 if you're living in Switzerland is probably $140, right? To buy the same product or whatever. Whereas if you're living in, I don't know, Mexico, maybe it's $60. And I'm just taking those figures.
yeah, it depends on the item, of course. Yeah.
Exactly.
Should we move our headquarters then to Switzerland? Would it have been an interesting business case?
Yeah, but it's interesting, the question of that, how will participants be affected by that or accept that, is usually a U.S. question, North American question, because we're not as used to driving, 100 miles of being in another country with another currency, another cost of living. Now the EU, you have a lot of similar currencies there, of course, but you think of Latin America, Asia, and Europe, that's not unusual that, they have a different cost of living, they have a different currency. So knowing that somebody else got 50 points, I got 45, okay, I understand that. For the U.S., it would be very difficult. If somebody in one state got something different than somebody in another state, that wouldn't fly probably.
No, maybe a question I'm interested to hear, and I think I know the answer already, but it's good to hear your vision. Is how have you, from the American point of view, experienced the inflation the last, let's say, 6 to 12 months? Well, what's your view there?
Yeah, personally or through
whatever you feel comfortable on sharing, Let's start with the personal one.
Just kidding. Yeah, it takes a lot more to fill up my car now. It's interesting because obviously everything's going up, and you like to hold prices in catalogs very similar. Now, when you have gift cards, obviously the dollar value stays the same. What you can buy with it's different, so it's really a merchandise situation. And it's just a factor that we have to deal with right now, and your money goes left, doesn't go as far as it used to.
And do customers follow, or are they resisting that view, or
I think everybody's feeling it, so they know it's coming. I think it's one of those that at the beginning it's hard to accept, but when you see it everywhere, you go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station, then you go to your catalog, you kind of expect it. So
it's a fact, and they're seeing it probably in their wage packet, right? So they know it's their dollar is going less, or going less far. So I think they understand from that point of view. The challenge is to see, can they increase budgets,
right?
Rather than devaluing the dollar. Can you increase your budget to match the cost, to make sure that the level of interaction, the level of engagement remains the same? You mentioned earlier on, Kurt, just that idea of cutting budgets is engagement, is recognition, or sales incentives, are they is that the first thing that gets chopped? And I think probably in the economic crash it was, they look, well, okay, what costs are going to impact? But I think that's changed over the last 10 plus years. People now say, no, we don't want to lose our staff. We can't cut our budgets in sales incentive and employee engagement, employee recognition, because then we're going to lose the right team. It's going to impact our overall business, and then we got to hire people back, and that cost is much greater. But it's taken us a while to get there.
Right. Because we've seen in the past where budgets just get dropped and it's done, and that just doesn't work. The pandemic taught us one thing, though, is if you can weather the storm and keep as much of your talent as you can, even though it's hard because you're not getting the revenue, it pays off when you get through it. And that attitude for employee engagement is going to be important. Now, you may see a reduction possibly, but at least you're keeping the program going, you're keeping that engine running. And the more you invest in that engine, I think that's the big thing that's changed worldwide with employee engagement, is that people now understand the investment in people and how important it is and what the return is. And that's the most important piece, because in the past, oh yeah, let's invest, it feels good, but I think they really see that return now and understand, yeah, I may be paying here at this point when it's harder for me to pay for an engagement program, but I know I'm going to get a return on that.
Right.
It's going to be important.
And you don't want to throw it all away, whether that's culture or staff or your
Right.
best people, and start right back to the start 10 years ago, and
Right.
it's even more expensive to get there.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's a great takeaway to, and
Yeah.
maybe this.
Well, I just wanted, we've a couple of minutes just
Okay.
left, and I just, so Letitia is a strategic partner of ITA Group, and we're proud to be. Tell us a little bit about ITA Group and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we've been around for 60 years, since 1963, full service company. We do employee engagement, of course. We do sales incentives, events, meetings and events. We do corporate travel. We also made some great acquisitions recently. We have a research firm right here in Boston. We have a big events firm in California. Just did a learning development acquisition out of the UK, NKD. Very happy to have them on board. HDK we just brought in for our consumer line, which is a new line for us, but we've been doing consumer for years. We're just doubling down now and really pushing hard on that solution. My role is to take what we do in the US, so what we think very well, and we have a great message, great solutions, great people, and spread that out worldwide. I look at it as a great way for us to do more goodness. All the goodness we're doing in the US now we're trying to do everywhere. And it goes back to that tenet of let's not leave anyone behind. I don't care if you're just a few people down in Argentina or a few people in Malaysia, you're just as important to an organization, because we talk about diversity, right? And how important that is for an organization. To get the most out of your people, you need to not only have diverse people, but engage those people as well. And you can't then have an engagement program that doesn't engage your whole workforce worldwide, no matter where they are or how big they are. And that's a primary tenet of ours.
Yeah. And you guys live it, or as you say here, you drink the Kool-Aid, right? We've had the pleasure, obviously, to meet some of your team here in Boston this week. We've had the pleasure of spending some time up in West Des Moines in your corporate headquarters. It's a beautiful company. I mean, you guys live your values on a daily basis, right? And that's obviously, I think, what attracted both companies to each other in terms of a strategic partnership. We saw something in each other that was quite similar. So
exactly, because we've been your way as many times as you've been, or maybe a little more than you've been our way. But it's a great partnership, and we'll look forward to really building successful.
And maybe for the viewers and listeners, it all happened during COVID. So we started working together without we knew each other, of course, and we knew each other, but with the team at ITA was working together from a distance was really unique and achieving great stuff. Together for our customers was exciting and energizing.
You went from that little picture on the screen to
then you meet each other for the first time. They tend to be bigger or smaller or thicker or thinner, and then what can I say? What can't I say? So it's always interesting. But it's great of us working together.
Well, guys, go there as ever, and Kurt, thanks very much for your time and for spending some time with us over the last couple of days. I hope folks hold you like what you hear, and remember, it's all about engagement. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.